Hey guys, this is for Module 5 discussion. Considering my career track and professional history, what are the most important leadership and followership approaches you should use, consider, develop as you prepare for future work? So I actually think that a mix of all these approaches are important when you are developing to either become a leader or to train someone to become a leader. Personally, when I was trained at Taco Bell, I was trained using the situational approach. That's on page 197. And a situational approach to leadership is when you are put in situations that lead or enable different types of leadership behaviors. I was thrown into situations where I had to come up with an answer myself based off of how I'd seen it done before or based off what I judged to be correct, or at least what I judged to be the right thing to do at the time. I did get some hands-on training. We had videos, like training videos. We also had the ability to see what other managers did and how they dealt with similar situations. But in the end, it was still up to me to make that final decision, and then typically the management team just kind of backed your decision, just so that way you had credibility, or you were empowered to do so. As I prepare for future work, I actually want to use a more relational approach because I think that it can be more beneficial. So on page 202, a relational approach focuses on the relationships that develop between leaders and followers. So Taco Bell had a high turnover rate, which means that we had a lot of people get hired and quit regularly. So basically what that meant was it made it difficult to have, that kind of leader-follower relationship with specific crew members. So there's typically, you get work 5 days, get 2 days off, is kind of the way they do it, unless you're part-time and then you might work less. So there'd be times where people would be there, they'd, work for 4 weeks and then find something else or not want to be there or something happened, whatever it was. But if I only worked 2 days with them and only worked, 6 to 8 shifts total with them, it made it pretty hard to get to know them. And I think at the time, we usually had to have staffing somewhere around 30 to 40 people on roll at any given time, including managers and GMs and all that stuff. But currently, where I work right now, there are 7 people. So way, way, way easier to make good relationships and connections with my boss and other coworkers because there's way less of us, and for the most part, I see pretty much everyone, well, daily. So, discuss the importance of mentorship and coaching your desired career track. Okay? So, mentoring starts on page 217, and that is the transfer of experience from a senior individual, which is the mentor, to a junior individual, which would be the mentee, in an effort to help the junior individual learn the ins and outs of organizational life. So, the flip side of that, or the second part of that, is coaching. Coaching is the process of providing advice, instruction, and support in an attempt to help an individual be more efficient or productive in the workplace. So that being said, mentoring is something that I have had some pretty recent experience with because I started my IT career-ish pretty recently. And so I was an intern originally, with the Cheney School District. So they do IT work for local schools in the, Cheney, and basically in the Cheney District, there's 10 schools. So during my job as an intern, it was basically during COVID time, so they had to kind of get devices for all the kids. So it was my job to fix, repair, power wash, enroll, kind of take care of everything that had to do with Chromebooks, laptops, wireless hotspots, and iPads, any electronic device that the school would use. And so I went knowing nothing about Chromebook setup, hotspot setup. I knew a little bit about laptops, but not into the depth that I needed to know for here. And so essentially, I would say for probably 85% of my time, I had someone mentor me. I had basically a buddy, someone who would show me the ins and outs of what to do. So basically, they would show me how to fix a Chromebook screen, for instance. I would watch my mentor. I'd watch him how he does it. He would talk about it, explain what he's doing, and then he would let me try it. And then he would watch me do it. And then it got to the point where after I did a couple, he would, kind of let me, got to that point of trust where I was doing them right, I was doing them good, doing them effectively, that they didn't have to, like, watch me like a hawk. I could just kind of keep going and going, and they'd get it. And then eventually, when I was proficient at whatever thing I was, replacing a screen, then they'd, have me replace a motherboard or find another fix that needs to be done and teach me how to do that, show me how it's done, explain how it's done. Things like you have to keep it unplugged from the wall. You shouldn't have power on it. You're going to need to take the battery out. A lot of little different things that you'll need to do when working on these. And then the flip side of that is that I would also get coached on things that I already had knowledge of. So just to become more efficient. So I used to, when I first started it out, you do kind of things one at a time so you don't mess up too much stuff or, jump too far ahead. So when I was enrolling Chromebooks into our domain, there's a couple of key sequences and things you have to do to get them in there and, type some stuff out. Basically, I was doing them like one at a time. I was just, kind of going slow. And basically my mentor at the time was, or even if someone else I was working with would kind of coach me and say, hey, you know what, check this out. This is what I used to do. And they would set up 6 Chromebooks across the table, basically what fits on the length of a table with them plugged in. And then he would have me do the sequence all the way down, basically go each step on each one all the way down and work my way down the table. And pretty soon, when I got proficient at that, by the time I was doing, and what it took me to do one Chromebook, in that time of doing 1 or 2, I could have 6 of them done and then 12. And I could, keep kind of going on that way because I could do each side of the table. So I personally thought that was a cool thing to learn. But basically, he just showed me a more productive way to do my work and get it done, which I totally appreciate. Okay, so define and differentiate between identity, image, and culture. All right, so on page 237 in the book, in Chapter 8, as defined by Hatch and Schultz, they defined organizational identity as the internal perspective of members who identify with the organization and base their interpretations of the organization on internal information rather than what outsiders say. Organizational culture emerges as members express their collective identity and collectively form unconscious assumptions and meanings that shape everyday organizational life. Organizational image is the external perspective of outsiders who do not identify with the organization and base their interpretations of the organizations on multiple sources. So that was a quote from the book about kind of the 3 of those together. So I will try to apply this in the best way that I think I can. So I see culture as being the values shared in the organization. So this is what the actual workers feel about the company. So we'll take Talkable, for example. This would be like your crew members, the people actually on site. They'll say things like whether they love it, whether they hate it. It's kind of a thing that I've noticed bonds the crew together from the inside that you don't really get to see on that outsider's perspective. Organizational identity is what you see or perceive from the outside. So that would be the person in the drive-thru, in their car. They know they can pay someone to get tacos and burritos. They see ads telling them to go in and get, whatever the new promotion is. And they get, ads telling them to, hey, apply to Taco Bell. It's got good wages. It's a friendly place to work. It's, hoorah! I'm just going to say, information that could be faked or mislead you. It might not be a happy place to work with great wages, but you don't know that because you don't have the inside scoop, or the workers, who actually work there who might tell you how, miserable or how happy it might be. For organizational image, I see that as the district managers or maybe the owners of the company. So they see things from a whole different perspective that's not quite from the outside like a customer perspective, but they also don't see it from the worker's point of view either. They kind of see it in a limbo, kind of in between there. They see it as dollars and cents, profits and loss. They see it as corporate versus franchise if they have, stores set up that way. So it's just multiple different ways, kind of, I would say almost like a bird's eye view, using that as a loose term there, rather than the hands-on, down in the trenches kind of view that you might see. So I hope that made sense. And then discuss some similarities and differences between organizational identity and identification. Okay, well, I like the concept of the identity-identification duality on page 241. This is where the more that members identify with an organization, the more they seek out like-minded members and interact with them more who they might identify with that organization. So this is like when you're working with one of your coworkers and find things in common with them. As you work with them, and you'll identify with them more and more and more and be more comfortable with them. So the difference that I see is that the organization has an identity that the workers may identify with that organization. So I think that at my current job, where I'm part of an IT organization where we work with computers by fixing them, repairing them, cleaning them, just kind of taking care of them in general, I can identify with my coworkers by bonding through things like video games and, like what kind of computers have they built recreationally. I have a coworker who, he kind of is like me. He likes to play video games. He likes to work on computers. He likes to tinker, mess with servers, learn new things. So whenever we work together, we'll, that's just something that we can chat about openly, and we can just, go back and forth and give ideas and, hey, set up a camera, and I'm using this app or I'm using this server and it's working really well. Oh, well, hey, I tried this paid thing instead, and, it's got like a cloud service and it's really good. So we can kind of have the little bit of a bonding moment over that. So I did kind of think it was a tricky concept a little bit to wrap my head around in some places, but I gave a stab at it. That's kind of my interpretation of it. And then, so for the use case, identify at least one thing from each major section to help us better understand the case. So the first thing I notice is that Jeff Donaldson, the CEO or the leader of this business, he's very family oriented. So he appears to have the country club management style, which is the style where you're concerned with establishing and fostering relationships with followers, and projects that you're working on, kind of your work, kind of falls to the back burner. So basically, you see this a few times in the case, actually. So on page 202 and 203 from the book, this is where that's at, by the way. The first example is that when he gets to work, many people have, they'll arrive late. They arrive around 9 and they'll get off early at like 5:15. And it's just kind of the culture there, the kind of the way it is. And then he also says that he expected no one's going to work a 70-hour work week. We're not going to overwork people. Plants close on Sundays. They're closed on holidays. Like it's very family oriented. They don't, he wants you to have a separate work-life balance. And then from chapter 8 on page 240, the psychology of identification, I think it applies to the use case using the social identity theory. So at the beginning, Kate was not interested in the job until she got the call from the CEO, Donaldson. And then she was impressed with Donaldson's charisma, but mainly that he said, she wouldn't get a lot of interference from management for the stuff she wants to do, the projects, the things that she, wants to do to make the company better and kind of grow herself and her career. And essentially that was, fine at first, but then it wasn't. The distinctiveness and prestige of the organization were nothing that drew Kate in, but, Donaldson's words and promises did. However, she found that the black hole that was holding her projects up from being completed until she, basically would lose her drive in the end and be comparable to how Tom did, where he, kind of went in there gung-ho and was just kind of over the years beaten down, battered down, and now he's just kind of complacent. He just goes with the flow of things, and he doesn't really try to push things, argue. He just kind of goes in and out. And like he said, he has, I think it said he had 2 kids, and a wife and 2 kids or something. And so he's like, you know what, it works for me. He can, come in late, get off early. He has a job, he gets paid well, and he's just kind of vibing. So, but, for your professional drive, it kind of seems gone. And then Donaldson also appears to have simple control through direct and open use of power, as well as technical and bureaucratic control. So by that, he essentially, it sounds like him and his smart board get control over everything and the final say over everything. So while Kate's trying to push this idea, this product, this new revolutionary, new tech thing, she can't really do that without his permission. And as she tried to do it, she got everything set up. She made the plans. She talked to the plant member. She got everyone kind of gung-ho ready to go. She was just waiting on the final say from Donaldson, and then nothing. Time goes by. Nothing. Time goes by. She's trying to be patient. She talks to the secretary. Secretary's like, oh, he's, on a business trip in the Bahamas. He's on vacation. He's doing his thing. Well, that doesn't really work. That doesn't help her out, and so now she's getting stressed, and it's just not a good mix. So you know, she has to kind of make the decision of, is she going to stay because she moved, you know, across the country to go do this job? Does she move back or does she stay? You know, who knows? So, thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see your videos.